Thank you so much for coming out on such a beautiful, warm morning in November. This is a very special day. We are honoring 4 people from our past: Noah and Carrie Pinkney, Henry Spradley, and Robert Young. This is the culmination of more than 3 years of work by dozens of faculty, staff, and students. It's a really, special occasion, and we're going to do our best to try to honor these figures in the presence of their descendants here today at Dickinson College. It's really remarkable. We have over 50 descendants of the new namesakes that we're putting on our campus today. They come from all over. We have people here from California, from Kansas, from Missouri, from South Carolina, and of course, Central Pennsylvania, Carlisle, Harrisburg. We have a whole range here. I thought our youngest descendant was 6 years old, but apparently there's a 2-year-old in the audience here today wearing one of these memorial ribbons. And we have some older descendants here as well. Now, I didn't ask their age, but we have some very distinguished great-grandmothers in our audience today, and we're very grateful that they made the effort to come. We, especially for the younger descendants, and especially for all of the students from Dickinson who've come out today, and we're truly grateful for that. It's important that we learn more about the individuals that we're honoring today. These are not just names on a gate or on a building. They're supposed to be stories that can inspire us. The people that we're honoring today overcame great obstacles. And even after they were free, they faced even further obstacles, but they persevered. And that's why we study and commemorate historical figures like the Spradleys, the Youngs, and the Pinkneys, because it helps inspire us to do better and to do more in our own lives. And so we thought the most fitting way to handle this ceremony today would be to have students from Dickinson come up here and tell their stories for you to listen and think about. And it would give us a chance to honor them and their memory together here. So we're going to start that process by asking Jordan Nye, a student and an intern at the House Divided Project, to come up here and speak to us about Noah Pinkney.
In the 1950s, Noah Pinkney became the first formerly enslaved person ever recognized at Dickinson College. At that time, the school installed a plaque near East College Gate to honor his memory as the most popular food seller in campus history. Noah Pinkney may have been remembered as a beloved and respected figure in Carlisle by the 1950s, but he was born enslaved in Frederick, Maryland in the 1840s. During the Civil War, he came to Harrisburg. In 1863, he helped dig entrenchments during the Confederate invasion of Pennsylvania. Before the war ended, he also served in one of the segregated black regiments in the Union Army. His unit was actually present at Robert E. Lee's surrender at Appomattox in 1865. After the war, Pinkney returned to his family in Harrisburg before eventually settling in Carlisle during the 1880s. He and his second wife, Carrie Taylor Pinkney, then became legends in the local community for selling delicious treats such as pretzels, sandwiches, and ice cream, both on and off campus, for nearly 40 years. Everyone in town seemed to know Uncle Noah, or Pink as he was often called, but the Dickinson students appeared to cherish him the most. One student, the namesake of our library in fact, once recalled about his college days, "You may have forgotten the binomial theorem. You may no longer remember the laws of heat. You may not be able to locate Tycho's star, but you do remember Noah Pinkney." Noah Pinkney was clearly important to Dickinson College, but he was also a significant leader in Carlisle, serving as a commander of his local GAR Veterans Post, as a precinct organizer for the Republican Party, and as a committed civil rights activist in town before his death in 1923. That is why Pinkney Gate represents such a fitting memorial to the legacy that Noah built with his wife, Carrie. Today, I stand here on behalf of the Dickinson students, faculty, and staff to help further acknowledge Noah and Carrie Pinkney's remarkable struggles for freedom and their years of service to our college and to the local community.
When Dickinson College installed a plaque at East College Gate in memory of Noah Pinkney, there was no mention of his wife and business partner, Carrie Taylor Pinkney. Yet Carrie Pinkney, a former enslaved woman, was just as popular with the students as her husband Noah, and just as vital to their food-selling business and the Carlisle community. Carrie Taylor was born into slavery in Winchester, Virginia in the 1840s. She came to Pennsylvania sometime during the Civil War era and later settled in Carlisle with her husband Noah in the 1880s. For many years, Carrie worked as a household servant for various prominent Carlisle families. She was also a lay church leader at the Bethel AME Church and was one of the organizers of the community's temperance or anti-liquor movement. Of course, for decades, Carrie also helped run Noah's food-selling business. Noah was famous for taking his peddler's cart full of pretzels, sandwiches, and ice cream all over town and to campus, especially by East College. But Carrie was the one who mostly ran the popular restaurant, which they had established out of their home on West Street. The students back then didn't have a hub, but they did have the Pinkneys. Carrie and Noah didn't have any children of their own, but late in life they did act as guardians of one of Carrie's nieces, a young woman named Gertrude Taylor, who apparently had a beautiful singing voice. Today, it is especially important that we remember Carrie Taylor Pinkney alongside her husband Noah. In the old days, Dickinson students often referred to the couple as Uncle Noah and Aunt Noah, an affectionate gesture, but one almost completely erasing her identity. We cannot afford to do that anymore. By remembering Carrie Pinkney, we are recognizing that women, just as much as men, played pivotal roles in the shaping of our nation, our communities, and our college. In this way, the new Pinkney Gate will stand as a symbol, not just of a more inclusive past, but also a more honest one.
To appreciate the importance of Henry W. Spradley to the Dickinson community, all you need to know is just one simple fact. When the popular janitor died in 1897, they canceled classes and held his memorial service in Bosler Hall because Spradley's local church was too small for the expected crowd of mourners. Spradley was born as an enslaved man in Winchester, Virginia in 1830. He escaped from slavery during the Civil War and settled in Carlisle. Soon after, he joined the Union Army and served his country until the end of the conflict. Following the war, Spradley returned to Carlisle, and he and his wife, Mina, raised a family in town. Henry had been a stonemason in Virginia, but he worked various jobs in Carlisle before becoming a janitor in the late 1870s. Spradley held the post of head janitor at West College until his death in 1897. For many years, he served right alongside his friend, Robert Young, who became the head janitor over at East College. Together, they cleaned buildings on campus, rang the college bells, kept the rooms warm during the winter, and even occasionally protected the community from unwanted visitors. The entire Spradley family also lived on campus, effectively integrating the residential halls during the 1880s. They hosted annual dinners for the graduating seniors that sometimes got covered by local newspapers. When the school broke ground for Denny Hall in the 1890s, Spradley was part of the official ceremony. However, things were not always perfect. In 1892, when some money went missing, some students falsely accused Spradley's son Shirley of stealing. He was later exonerated, but clearly not all Dickinsonians rose above the prejudice of their times. Henry Spradley also contributed mightily to the Carlisle community. He was a leader of the West Street AME Zion Church and a member of the Grand Army of the Republic, a black veterans organization. When there were protests in town against discrimination at the local schools, Spradley and Robert Young were both there to give speeches. This is why we are honoring Spradley-Young today, in front of his descendants and our community. We don't have to cancel classes today like they did in 1897, but the spirit of respect and recognition for an influential life well lived remains.
Thank you, Amanda. And now, finally, we have Charlotte Goodman to speak to us today about Robert C. Young.
Until recently, Robert C. Young was the longest-serving employee in the history of Dickinson College. He was also a renowned figure in Carlisle, a respected church leader, and a defiant civil rights activist. Young was born enslaved on a plantation in Western Virginia around 1845. After the Civil War, he found his way to Carlisle, married Matilda Humphreys, and became a paid domestic servant to the Dickinson College president. Young then got promoted to senior college janitor, serving alongside his friend, Henry Spradley. During this time, Robert Young made quite an impression. He was a big, imposing, broad-shouldered man, known for confronting any misbehaving students, like those who once foolishly pelted him with snowballs. That's probably a reason he was chosen to be one of the college's first designated campus policemen or security officers around the turn of the 20th century. While there is no doubt that Robert Young was a tough guy, he was a morally courageous man as well. When his oldest son, Robert G. Young, graduated from Carlisle High School in 1885, Young wanted him to get a college education. Yet Dickinson had never admitted any black students before. The college had just accepted its first female and Native American students, and it was an era of change. So, the brave Robert Young went to the newspapers and eventually pressured reluctant college officials into accepting his son into the Dickinson Preparatory School as the first black student on our campus. He took classes for about a year before he left for Massachusetts, where he began a long career working as a maintenance engineer in local hospitals. Robert and Matilda Young had other children who were equally devoted to education and community service, and even a granddaughter who graduated from Dickinson College in 1934. Robert C. Young died in 1922, remembered and respected by generations of students and faculty who knew him so well. But after many years passed, our modern institution basically lost track of his inspiring story. Today, we are here to rectify that omission. Robert C. Young deserves to be remembered as an important figure in the history of our college, one who helped promote the integration of our school. He was a man who not only believed in equality, but also was determined to fight for it.
Thank you, Charlotte. So, our college president, John Jones, has been a longtime supporter of this initiative, even before he was president, when he was on the Board of Trustees and chairman there. This has been a long process, and he's been intimately involved in it, and so it's very appropriate that I ask him now, as our interim president, to come up and say a few words about what this all means, for the school at this moment in our time. So, President Jones.
Good morning. Thank you, ladies, for the remarkable House Divided initiative and all that you've accomplished. And Matt, I can't thank you enough. It is a great day at Dickinson College. Beautiful weather for November, and it's so good to see you all here. Some of you traveled far to come to this meaningful ceremony. And it is my great honor to speak to you briefly about what this means to Dickinson College and should mean for all of us. It's a landmark day. I'm thrilled that we're joined by so many from our Dickinson family and beyond. And obviously, we are so appreciative, as I said, that the family and friends of the 4 members of our community who are at long last receiving proper acknowledgement for their contributions to this college and the Carlisle community are here. It is fitting that you could be here for this event. As Matt mentioned, you have, by your presence here, demonstrated how important this is, and we deeply appreciate that. And I wonder, what would they think? What would these proud men and this woman think about this day some 100 years later? It is indeed long overdue, but we're here, and there is no time like the present. Now, additionally, we have several former House Divided students and other alums with us, including Greg Zimmerman of the class of '83, a dedicated and engaged Dickinsonian and history major, and Eric Wittenberg, also class of '83. Eric will be delivering a lecture on the Battle of Gettysburg later this evening. I'm also happy to see some of our high school friends who are here, and I met them in the summer. They studied as part of the Teagle Foundation funded Knowledge for Freedom seminar. We welcome you back. I am indeed incredibly proud of how we arrived at this day. In true Dickinson fashion, these renamings that we celebrate today are an example of the college embracing an opportunity to make positive change, to shine a light not only on the many admirable aspects of our past and present, but also acknowledging that we are not perfect and that our history is not without tarnish. But we have to lean into that, and it is important that we do so. This journey started in the fall of 2017 in Matt's History 311 class entitled American Slavery, where students combed through the college's archives and other resources to uncover the college's ties to both the slavery and anti-slavery movements. It was a highly concentrated and relevant inquiry. That research was revealing and sobering, but again, in true Dickinson form, we didn't back away from the uncomfortable realities that were uncovered and that we knew and that we found out. Instead, those initial students and those who followed confronted our past and lifted up stories that needed, actually cried out to be told. Their work led to a Dickinson and Slavery website that was launched in the fall of 2018, the opening of the permanent exhibit in the House Divided Studio in the spring of 2019, and eventually to the publication of the enlightening Dickinson and Slavery Report that very same year. From there, the report was reviewed and endorsed by various entities at the college, including the then president of the college and her senior leadership team, a cross-campus ad hoc committee made up of students, faculty, staff, alumni, and trustees, and finally, the Board of Trustees in May of 2020. All of the entities eagerly and exuberantly endorsed each of the key recommendations from the initial report. Those recommendations included renaming Cooper Hall in recognition of Henry Spradley and Robert Young, and renaming the East College Gate in recognition of Carrie and Noah Pinkney, which we are officially doing today. The report also recommended that the House Divided Project team of students and faculty continue to develop content for public explanations of these name changes, including the development of wayside markers on campus. These markers were actually unveiled last spring, and we will all have the opportunity to tour them today after this ceremony. The markers have become an integral part of highlighting Dickinson's complicated history with slavery. The fourth and final recommendation contained in the report is to continue the college's consideration of possible additional renamings among the college's buildings. I am committed, as president of Dickinson College, to completing this final aspect of the recommendations in the coming year so that we can take advantage of any additional identified opportunities to create greater diversity in our campus, so that we can commemorate efforts and so that we can continue to recognize Dickinsonians who have contributed significantly to our college and beyond. So then, today is a celebration that is long overdue. We must continue to face and acknowledge our true history. Embrace it. Ask the tough questions, regardless of where they might lead, and above all, continue to lift up the stories of remarkable Dickinsonians for their courage and their accomplishments. Before I step aside and finish these remarks, I salute you, all of the descendants, the wonderful descendants of these, as I said, terrific individuals who gave so much to us here at Dickinson. Let's give a hand to all the descendants who came from near and far to be with us. Would you stand up, please?
It's really important to recognize not only the four wonderful student speakers that we had today, but we had a litany of student workers who produced the material and did the research that made all of this possible. So I'm going to read their names, the 10 who are the most significant over the years in these contributions, and 5 of them are here in our presence. I'm going to ask them to stand when I'm done. They are Sarah Elan, Amanda Donahue, Sarah Goldberg, Frank Klein, Dana Marichaux, Rachel Morgan, Rebecca Stout, Najee Thompson, Sam Weissman, and Cooper Wingert. Will those of you who are present please stand and let's acknowledge them for their work as well. I hope all of you feel inspired today by these stories and by the struggles, and just a reminder that perseverance and resilience are what make it possible for all of us to do better and to do more. And we can live in the shadow of the Pinkneys and the Youngs and the Spradleys and remember that. I'm going to now ask Reverend Gerald Crummy, who's the newly appointed minister at Bethel AME Church, where the Pinkneys were longtime members, to come up and lead us in a benediction. And when he's done, I have a couple of quick announcements, some stage directions, and then we will depart. So, Reverend Crummy.
In a sign of solidarity, will we all stand for this benediction? I know we can't all touch and link arms, so we can do this together. Amen. Let's bow our heads. Creator of all things that ever was, will be, and in present. We thank you now for this moment. Allow this moment to serve as a seed. Allow this moment to serve as a seed in us as we leave this space and place. Let the words spoken here marinate on our minds, our hearts. As the songwriter said, let the work and labor of my hands speak for me. And the work of these men and women spoke up for them. And we are the seeds. Let us now go and plant as we close this service in this time. Thank you, Creator. Amen, amen, and amen.
Thank you all for coming. It's been a great day, and I think we're all honored with our new campus namesakes. Thank you very much.